Tough. Tough.
And the second thing I want to say, and the second thing I want to say, and the second thing I want to say is no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have, and my team.
Insight. I mean, you're a free woman now. You're not bound by anything.
Oh, no. As long as Michael Morrissey's in power, no.
You gotta give it up. You gotta give it up. Sorry.
That's the Turtle Boy guy, right? The guy that was blogging about the whole thing. He's become this whole thing is quite a scene. These people showing up every day. Stand by with us.
Have we never name dropped anything?
Yeah, we don't name drop. I'm not gonna name even with you when that girl what's her name? KRUSTY Panties, she kept trying to bait me in to talk about you. And she's like, TB. And I was like, who? Tom Brady? Who's that? You know?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, that's one of the first times I watched like a full program. Like you just owned her, man. Like it was great. Like there was like 45 minutes of her trying to like get over on you, and you just kept bringing back the facts and just owned her. It was great. So I was impressed. But yeah,
need a link.
Purpose only. It doesn't mean to hurt any, and don't take it seriously.
Sir, did you make any phone calls after you went to bed between the hours of 1:45 a.m. and 6:30 a.m.?
Yes.
Who did you call?
I inadvertently called Brian Higgins.
But you're so full of shit.
You inadvertently called him at 2:22 in the morning.
Yes.
How did you inadvertently call him?
Well, I don't know because it was inadvertent.
But you're so full of shit.
It's hard because you know what it is? It's my callers are calling and I don't want to disrespect them, you know?
Right.
Call from. Hey.
You're live with J.F.K. Who's this?
Why are you hanging up for?
Was that her?
It sounds like she said Kate.
She totally hung up. Listen, let me be clear to my callers. All my callers that want to call in right now, we were trying to get a call from this girl, Kate. I know she took over the chat. Some of you guys are probably, feel disrespected. And if you do, I apologize. That's not was my intent. My intent for this show was not to have someone come in the chat and hijack it. But this is your chat, people. You guys are familiar with this person. I am not. I am not familiar with her.
Yeah.
So I feel, let's see.
Call from Kate Peter.
Hey. You're live with JFK.
I finally got through. I got sent this link in my email by somebody purporting to be James Jackson. If you're claiming that's not accurate, then I will accept that at face value, although it's weird. And I tune in, and the first thing I hear you say is talking about John's niece and nephew and thinking about them over Christmas, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Are you really thinking about them, though?
Yeah, of course I am. Yeah, of course I am. Come on.
I'm serious. What? I do as well. So I think we can appreciate what kind of effect this social media circus could have on them, correct?
No, facts. I totally understand. But we're not going after the kids. And and they, you don't think they got questions though too if they're old enough? How old are they? Because I don't know exactly how old they are.
16 and 13.
You don't think a 16-year-old don't have questions though?
I think that she has opinions, and she made them very clear, both with her testimony as well as some interviews that will come.
I didn't see the testimony. You're an asshole to everybody else.
Out about the Masshole thing. Listen, you're flipping out about the Masshole Mafia thing. What you don't understand, and I don't expect you to understand because you wouldn't follow the lore, is it's a joke. I was sued by a sovereign citizen who put into court filings that we were running a Masshole Mafia, Masshole troll mafia. I'm sorry, a troll farm, is what he claimed in court filings. It was silly. The judge shut it down, and we just kept the name because it was a joke, you know. Okay. So it's very tongue in cheek. It's not serious. I'm not actually engaged.
What does John's kids think about it though when they see Masshole Mafia? What do they think about that?
Do they think you're the
I,
mob?
from what I understand, from what's been communicated to me, they just appreciate that somebody stuck up for them and their family when no one else would. So I don't think the name is really a sticking point with anyone. I don't care who takes me seriously or not as far as that goes. I mean, I have the facts on my side, honestly, and it wouldn't really be an issue that much as far as this reasonable doubt that people like to tout now, right? Reasonable doubt is fine. If you can beat your case, whether you're guilty or not, based on ethical legal maneuvers, I applaud you for that. The system is certainly not looking out.
Let me ask you a question. You got an open case. People are saying that you got a case coming up and this and that, and they're going to violate your probation and shit.
Like 5 days or something.
Well, I understand that's what they want to happen.
No, let me just ask you a question. You don't listen. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to. But my point is, you're on probation though.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You told Sean in the Gulf, right? I would never talk to a DEA agent, right? Because I was once a drug dealer. I'm not saying that it's some sort of moral condemnation.
I said I wouldn't talk to a DEA agent, not because I was a drug dealer. I said I don't talk to a DEA agent because he's a fucking DEA agent. It's hard for me to talk to a cop. It's hard for me to talk to a cop, period, because I don't talk to cops.
So
but he's an OG. He's an OG.
Where does your animosity with the police come from? Where does that come from?
My animosity comes with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, me coming up in the system. It doesn't matter what I did for crime when I was growing up. You know, I wasn't an angel, but that doesn't mean they got to put me on the light. Like you got to. Here's my point. Why I'm asking you about the
people
probation.
Can't change.
Hold on a second, James. Here's my point about the probation. We know how probation can work and how they try to flip things because it's not your right. They do these probation surrender hearings and they try to trick you and hit you on your time, and you can get smoked up real quick for some hearsay shit because it's admissible in a probation surrender.
Oh, absolutely. Somebody gets sentenced to jail and they find some sort of net positive or personal growth from that. You consider that glorification?
No, it can come off that way.
How so, though? I don't see anybody taking a bad situation, taking accountability.
No, you take the account because when you get into the stories of how jail works, when you start saying there was a PC in the yard and there was a rapist and there was a snitch and I was on the first tier and I had to suck at this dude and the CO came in my cell and shook me down and took my cigarettes that I shouldn't have had, then you start talking about the prison system and you start getting into it and it and from the like I said, be clear from the casual,
glorifying jail like it's 88.
Right? From the casual.
So you think that their experiences are somehow less valid and that they shouldn't be discussed? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying they shouldn't be discussed. I'm saying for me, I'm speaking on why I don't speak on it. If other people speak on it, that's fine. I have friends.
Have you been locked up before?
I have been. I haven't. Yes, and I have been. But I've been locked up for something I didn't do too.
Okay, I'm not.
Right?
I don't know. I haven't looked into it at all. I have no.
Let me explain something. It had to do with probation because a certain cop knew I was on probation and tried to get me on the probation. You understand what I'm saying?
I totally understand
right?
that. Once the system gets you in its throes, it's very difficult to get out of it. I don't understand that so much from the legal perspective as of yet.
Let me say this. The reason why when you speak on it from a casual person, same thing I said about your name, Masshole Mafia, when you have a casual person, a person that does have no stake in anything, a person who just might click on and watch you. If they click on and watch you when you're in the middle of a rant talking about I was on the first tier and I had to punch a dude and a CO bundled me, they might take that as glorification and they didn't get the whole story.
Well, they're not going to get that on the Masshole Mafia
But
channel,
what I'm saying is when they see the Masshole Mafia,
using it as an example,
I'm using is I'm paralleling it to when you have it's all name recognition. That's how it goes. I'm trying to put you on to something. So that's why
are you in marketing? Is that what you do?
That's what I mean. That's what I do.
You're marketing.
I mean,
it's marketing.
It's what it's life.
I am not personally in marketing. I am in a completely different sphere as far as that's concerned. Not really concerned with the brand connotation or anything like that. I can appreciate that you are. But again, it's a tongue-in-cheek joke. I have a pretty well-established subscriber base of about 3,600 people. 36,000 people,
that's great.
Which is a drop in the bucket as far as YouTubers go. But they're pretty invested and loyal, and like we get the joke. And that's fine, but I'm not that concerned about my brand. What I am concerned about in the Karenread case is the ramification and impact that it's had on these families, right? That unlike perhaps you and I have never had a brush with the law, have not been accused of any crimes, have not been charged with any crimes, have certainly not ever been incarcerated on any crimes, right? And these are parents down to children, right? Including John O'Keefe's niece and nephew, his children for all intents and purposes, right? So that is my main concern with this case, right? Is what if you're wrong?
If I'm wrong, right? If you could show me where I'm wrong. We've seen the case, I've seen the trial. Unless Hank Brennan pulls something out from these things and it tells me that it happened, he can show me proof that I'm wrong.
Karenread is innocent, and she didn't do this crime. No one could prove that she did this crime, so I looked at her from day one as an innocent woman that needed to be proven guilty, and I don't think any of that was shown in this process.
And I am taking the defense at face value. I am giving them credit for everything they are saying is true as far as the post-trial motions and the post-trial controversy. They are reporting themselves that 9 out of 12 jurors found her to be criminally responsible.
So what if you're wrong?
So, but what if I'm wrong? Then I can honestly say I've said some mean shit to people on Twitter, and I can rest my head okay at night. I haven't gone to anyone's house, organized any rolling rallies, caused people to be in fear for leaving their property. I have not put their children in mental hospitals. I mean, that is the impact.
Who was in mental hospitals?
I can tell you without giving specifics that 3 children involved in this case, not mine, okay, just so we're clear, not mine, but 3 children involved in this case that didn't ask to be involved, some of which might be very close to John O'Keefe, have ended up in mental hospitals in intensive inpatient treatment because of the ramifications of this horrendous social media campaign. Right. And so if you're right, and she is pure as the driven snow and innocent, why did these children have to suffer? And if you're wrong, even more so, why these children had to suffer? You know, these people have been.
So that's what we're standing on right now, though. We talking about that's your main concern is the kids. That's what we're saying.
My main concern is the witnesses as a whole, their children, their families, everybody, because these people, again, have not been accused of any crimes. They have not been charged with any crimes. There's been no evidence.
Why do you think they're not charged with any crimes, though? What's going on with the feds? You got any insides, though?
Because there's no evidence to support that they're guilty of any crimes. It doesn't even establish probable cause, which I'm sure you, as well as I, as people who have had brushes with the criminal justice system, we understand that the standard for probable cause is very low, like comparative to.
So let me ask you this: if the shoe is on the other foot, right, and they arrested everybody in that house, right? They said, okay, circumstantial evidence. He was on your lawn, right? Boom. He got beat up, right? The whole thing. They arrested him, this and that, and they're on trial. Do you think they beat the case?
There's no case. I mean, what do you have for circumstantial evidence? Some speculation about purported butt dials, which is a colloquial
but to a jury,
term,
though.
Right?
To a jury.
This is a thing that
we had nothing to do with.
We hadn't came and told the truth, and that's it.
But let's just say Big Bad Brian A said, I'm cool enough to take the stand in my defense.
Why do you call him Big Bad Brian A?
Because he's Big Bad Brian A. He's a big bad dude,
Why?
Man. Why not? He's a big bad cop. He's a big bad cop.
Have you met him before?
No, I haven't met him, but he's a big bad boss.
So you've never spoken to him. But
he's Big Bad Brian A. Have you met him?
I saw him on Boston's Finest.
By you meeting these people, that makes what? What difference does that make?
I get to hear their story. I had the benefit of being able to hear their story pre-trial from multiple people. So
what is Big Bad Brian A saying? Why didn't he come out the house? Why did he make the butt? So you believe he butt dialed an ATF agent at 2 a.m? They butt dialed each other? You believe that?
I believe that inadvertent calls all the time. Course of the year and a half that I've known these people, I have received inadvertent dials from them. I have never made belief to assume that there was some sort of murder occurring, right? I mean, we're talking about inadvertent dials by their testimony that was never really challenged. There was no evidence to support anything to the contrary. So you know, the jury accepted it. I do too. But these inadvertent dials, we're talking about, you know, answers to voicemails or whatever else it may be that are a matter of seconds. I don't understand what kind of collusion anyone would believe could occur in that time. I don't understand why you would believe that somebody, you know, engages in assault and then decides, fuck it, let's up it to a murder. And then, you know, better yet, not only is it a murder now, but let's dump the guy in our own front yard, right? There's not a piece of evidence to suggest that he actually entered that house. That's based on witness testimony as well as his phone GPS data, right? There's nobody that saw him enter the house. Nobody at all.
So can I ask you this? Can I ask you a question? What about the waterfall video when they're leaving the waterfall and Higgins puts up his hands at 11:58? So let me just give
minute sort of nickel and diming these people.
Well, ask the
based on
what happened
when they
with
were
the fight?
all
Was that a fight?
That was not a fight. And again, if there was a fight, then why is Karenread making public statements that the atmosphere at the bar was great? No, everybody was getting along.
And guess what? Guess what, KP? And I don't mean to interrupt you, but guess what? I've been saying that the whole fucking time.
Listen, I don't want to make assumptions about anything about your life. I don't know you, nor do you know me. Okay. So I want to start that there. I am picking up on certain things where you talked about maybe your experiences with the criminal justice system. I'm, you know, listening to both you and my friend James over here, who insists that he didn't invite me to the stream, but I'm picking up on certain things that maybe you didn't come from an upper middle class socioeconomic background from the jump, which I did not either. So that's not any sort of judgment, right? But I mean, am I wrong? Am I off base here?
No, I'm from North Reading.
Okay, I'm not either. So like that's, I mean, like I just want to be clear, that's not a judgment. But I'm saying like we are looking things through our own lenses here, right? So you're looking at things through the lens of somebody who does not come from maybe the most advantageous socioeconomic background.
But they're Boston cops and ATF agents. They don't. They're the most ruggedest people on the planet. They're rugged. Once you become a cop, you become rigid.
True.
Brian A's a rigid dude. He's
not. So again, like from my experiences with him, and
have you watched Boston Finest? Have you watched Boston Finest to see where he acted?
I have, and I understand. I understand. Like he was a consummate professional that was very well regarded in his field, right? There's a certain sort of mask that these guys have to put on. Like, I mean, I don't deal with cops a lot. Like I try not to anyway. Not the best people.
So how would you know though? How would you know if they're not rigid people? Police are rigid people. They're in the streets all day. They're seeing the dirt. You're seeing the dirt.
I've gotten to know Brian pretty well. Okay, and I can honestly say, and this is something. Well, I mean, you know, before you endeavor to cover this, I would encourage everybody to at least attempt to do the same, because there's multiple sides to a story.
So it wasn't a fight?
You know, our criminal. I mean, by all accounts, no, there's not one person, including Karenread herself. The real truth is that there wasn't one, right? And that is the. Listen,
but there could be one, right? Go ahead.
No, I mean, at this point, there is nothing to suggest that there was, including the defendant's own account of the evening. So,
Can I give you one reason why to suggest it? Can I give you a reason to suggest it?
Because
Brian Higgins, hold on, I didn't give you the last one. Because Brian Higgins texted her at 11:32, 11:58, he's throwing up his hands, and then at 12:20, he texts John O'Keefe, "Are you coming here?" And he was fucking with his chick. In my world, we need to speak on this.
That's your world, though, and I
okay.
Think
so they weren't going to speak on
it.
They weren't. You know, the only person that could speak on that, I feel, and that I always ask him, "How would your brother handle it?" would be Paul. How would your brother handle it if your brother?
I know Paul as well.
So Paul's saying that wasn't a fight.
Fact at this point,
is he saying it was a fight?
There was no fight.
He's saying it's no fight. Okay, so he's saying it's no fight.
I will tell you what Paul O'Keefe's theory is if you're really curious about it.
Okay, go ahead. I'm definitely curious what Paul got to say.
So Paul O'Keefe's theory, as it was relayed to me, is that he believes that his brother squared up to Karenread's vehicle and was hit because of some sort of pride and bravado.
You wrong. You wrong. You wrong. You wrong. You wrong.
I don't know because I was not there, and I do not know John O'Keefe. Paul does, okay? And again, like,
But it
there's
was
no
told
world
to
in which
her.
Paul and Aaron and Peg and John Jr., all these people who are his direct family members who loved him very much, who feel the impact of his loss literally every single day. And you can't even fathom
But
the
Jay,
amount of
did
suffering that
Paul
they have
tell her
endured,
this?
not only because of the loss of not only Kristen, but John as well,
Jay.
and then the ensuing social media firestorm that was started. Like, the suffering is immense, right? There is no world in which they are not 100% absolutely invested in justice for John's death, right? Like, that is, I mean, take that off the table right now. All of the aspersions that have been cast at this family are offensive, harmful, and patently ridiculous, right? And they are absolutely convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that Karenread is responsible for his death. And I will say this, and this has been something that has been told to me by multiple family members across the board for, again, over a year and a half at this point, right? I first started making contact. It was actually his family that had reached out to me, and there are receipts for this, and you will see them on a very large streaming platform in the future, right? They reached out to me. They would not have had any sort of hatred in their hearts for Karenread had she just taken responsibility for whatever occurred. If it was an accident, it's an accident.
Do you think it was an accident?
I do. Okay. I believe it was an accident. I do not believe that she meant for him to die. I think that her behavior the next morning is pretty indicative of someone who is sobering up and realizing what the fuck happened. And, like, again, you know, I understand your chat and all the turtle people like to throw that term.
Yeah, but why? Can
around,
I say something when you say that?
What?
Listen, what's up with this turtle people stuff? Tell me about that. What is that? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I don't think that is really pertinent to what we're discussing. I think that, but unfortunately,
you said it.
Okay. So, you know, there is obviously Turtle Boy glommed onto this case. You know, he cooperated with Karenread. There's absolutely no doubt about that at this point, both through his own accounting as well as the evidence that has come out through search warrants and indictments and things of that nature, right? There was some form of, you know, cooperation. I have in my possession admin chats from her Facebook page, the Free Karenread Facebook page, whatever that is, where Turtle Boy himself is saying Karenread gave me the addresses, she set up the rolling rally, she told me where to go, she told me what to say, she told me to run Jen McCabe's plates, which he has not only been indicted on, but, you know, that survived up to the Superior Court and upheld at least the probable cause, right? And again, that standard is low, and I don't want to understate that too. Like, right, like, you're not guilty until you're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty, right? That's the standard. So I'm not going to I'm not going to jump too far into that because this is not my show. But we know there is some coordination there anyway. She chose to get in bed with these people. These are the people that are constantly engaged in a pattern of harassment and intimidation against these witnesses, right? So, you know, that is really the turtle cult part of it. And there is, you know,
think it's a cult?
Sort of, I mean, when you're encouraged not to question your leader.
Why would you think Karenread set this whole thing up? Why do you think that she's that smart enough to do all that and think like a criminal? You just told me earlier, you said, hey, listen, J.F.K, I don't think you was born with a silver spoon in your mouth. I'm paraphrasing what you said, but you basically, I didn't come up with money, right? And neither did you, right? You said. Now now on this side of Karen, what I assume with Karen, you know, her father, she had a tight knit family, and they might have been well off. I really don't know.
They're incredible.
Were they? Did they have money?
Who do you know in your life that can get $1 million attorneys at the first sign of trouble? Do you know anyone personally?
No, I don't. Well, I do. I know.
Right.
I know my boy Marky Mark. He could do that. I know a couple of rich people. You know what I'm saying? Right.
Oh, Marky Mark that doesn't want anything to do with this case. You mean Mark Wahlberg? Is that who you're talking about?
I mean, I could call him if you want and ask him. But anyway, but the thing is this, right?
Check out J.F.K status selector. Shout out. Anybody's up the street, do the right thing. Start doing this.
mean, as could I, because of his unscripted company and their
let me,
Yeah, all right,
overkill.
Kay, you can't call him. All right.
let me ask you this though. Let me ask you. So why do we? So okay, she came for money, whatever. But you know, she did her thing. She made it on her own. God bless her. She, you know, she did her thing.
Did she?
You know,
Did she though? I mean, that's again,
I
a lot
don't
of
know. I don't know.
speculation.
But I'm not gonna. I
Nor
don't
do
know.
I. But
All
I
right.
wouldn't feel comfortable saying one way or the other because that's
Okay.
speculation.
So at the end of the day, though, why do we think that she would think like a criminal, though? Because you're telling me she's thinking like a criminal. She masterminded this whole thing. She got with the.
I'm
She
going
got
off
with
of
it.
the
Why would you
evidence
think
that
that?
I have in my
Because you're
possession.
saying no.
You're
saying that she's the one that gave all the information to this guy, Turtle Boy, and she
Do
started
you
the
think he's
rolling
lying about
rallies.
that?
No, I
Do you
didn't.
think he's lying about that?
He said that.
Yeah, I mean, send me
I don't know.
somewhere
I
I
don't
can
know.
text right now. I'll send you the chat logs right now. Clarence Wood Eberson, that's his account. It can be confirmed, right? We all know that. And he is the one saying, Karenread sent me the addresses for the rolling rally. It was all her idea.
That's
I
not
went to
criminal
jail for
though.
it.
That's not that part is like that part
It
to me
is criminal because
was that criminal
he
though?
was
What
indicted.
he was doing?
He was indicted for it. So yeah, it's criminal. I mean,
Well,
that's kind of
I
undisputed
don't know. Listen, I don't know exactly what he did based on. I don't know the ins and outs of that case. I really don't. I don't follow that case.
They're connected. So I think that you
Are they
probably should
connected though?
apprise yourself.
Are they connected?
They're very much so. This is
What?
witness
How's that connected to
intimidation.
John O'Keefe? John O'Keefe is dead because of either the Alberts did it or Karenread did it, not because of Turtle Boy.
So if you want to know, then that would be the consciousness of guilt, right? Do innocent people often orchestrate the intimidation and harassment of every single state's witness against them?
What's that? Say that again. I'm sorry.
Do innocent people often coordinate the intimidation and harassment of every single state's witness against them? I have seen text messages directly from Karen to Aiden, right? And this is undisputed. Aiden has admitted that this is her sending the messages, right? That this, it's undisputed at this point, saying, "Fuck Paul O'Keefe. John's family sucks. I've changed my mind. I don't want them on our side. Go after them." I mean, do innocent people often do that?
Does innocent people do that? I don't know. I would have to answer. I don't know. Does innocent people do that? I don't know why. If she was being set up and all these things were happening, maybe she's speaking from a place that she shouldn't have said that.
Do innocent people often send the addresses of all the witnesses against them to somebody with the understanding that they're going to bring hundreds of people with a bullhorn to call them murderers?
if you're being charged with murder and you didn't do it, and that's the only,
I would not. Listen, I have been charged with crimes that I can confidently. I have been charged with crimes that I can confidently say that I did not commit.
Murder?
I have never been charged with murder. God willing, knock on wood there. But were I charged with murder, the tactic that I would take would not be to harass and intimidate the witnesses against me. I would rely on the evidence.
Maybe she didn't know. But that's what you say. Like intimidating a witness is a funny thing. You know what I mean? You could say you insulted them and you did something, and they could hit. They could. I
think it's a little bit extra when you're sending people to their kids' sports games, to their houses, to their businesses. When you are encouraging,
me personally, I wouldn't have did all that. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't have did all that.
Right, because I'm assuming that you would not murder someone either, right? And were you faced with a charge that serious?
But if I was faced, but hold on, if I was faced with a murder and everybody was slandering me and they got me thinking that I did something I didn't do, and I took it to the internet, right, to say, okay, I'm going to take it to the.
What do you mean by everybody was slandering you though? When this case
but I'm just saying,
really
like the people in the court system, they turned around and they had a witness.
That's due process.
So let me ask you this. This ain't speculation. This is what she said, right? In the Vanity Fair article. And I already said this before she even said it. Now we can agree that Yannetti was a prosecutor in Middlesex County for years. And he was putting
and Jackson was a prosecutor right.
So listen to what I'm saying. So in that 4 months, in that 120 days before she was indicted, when the manslaughter was on the table, you know and I know that Yannetti, right, was searching for a deal. That's what they do behind her back, whether she wanted to do it or not.
They were not searching for a deal.
Hold on. And she said in the Vanity Fair article that there was a deal on the table. She said that.
There was not a deal on the table.
But she said it. She said
it. But I'm telling you, so you're aware of the criminal justice system as
but let me just say this.
Right?
If there was a deal, if there was a deal on the table, which I honestly, I believe 110% with my whole heart, based on my experience, there was a deal on the table. If she was going to plea out, before that indictment. There always is. It might have not been what she wanted, but there was a deal on the table. The question is, why didn't she take that deal? And why would she go through all this?
I think hubris, and I think absolutely entitlement. That's honestly what I think. There are plenty of guilty people who have been convicted that did not entertain plea deals, which I can assure you, because as I'm sure you're aware, in the criminal justice system, whenever there is a plea that is on the table,
so
the
she's a mastermind and did all this?
I mean, according to the evidence, yes. I mean, for in excess of 40 hours of communications with Turtle Boy, who has been indicted on 19 counts of witness intimidation and related charges, right? In excess of 40 hours of communication, signal app communications. They were trying to obscure their communications as best they could. It didn't really work out. There's evidence of Turtle Boy himself claiming that she is the one who directed him to do several acts that he was later indicted for. Ergo, they are criminal, at least in theory.
Let me ask you this. You said you got a continued out of finding case, right? A quaff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was you guilty?
So
no, yes or no? Was you guilty?
Be real.
No, but you still took the plea.
No,
but you still took the plea.
I did take the plea, and
they pushed
did
you in a corner, right? Let me just okay.
Yeah,
let me just.
I wouldn't say I was. Listen, I wouldn't say that I was. I was okay. I mean, do we really want to? I mean, do you want a complete, comprehensive answer? Or
I don't want to know. I don't want to know your business, honestly, Kate.
Because I mean,
I don't want. I don't want to see. No, but I'm saying, I'm just asking you. You took it.
It's not technically an open case, so I feel comfortable.
But it is an open case. You're violating probation because of the quaff. It is open. And listen, you can't argue with me with that. That's a fact.
So the violation that has been filed was based on a false police report that was actually dropped by the police. I was in contact with the police today.
But you still got to go through it. You still got to go through it. Right?
So I got to go through it. The truth is that I did something fucked up. Do I consider it to be criminal? No. Is it what they accused me of? No. But did I still do something fucked up? Yes.
So how are you saying? But that's what I'm saying. But so what I'm trying to say is, right, you still took the plea. So what I'm trying to say is, right, she didn't take the plea. She didn't take the plea. I mean,
that's the difference, I guess, between my mindset and hers, right? Is that I felt that there was some sort of accountability that was owed in that. I did not want to put the alleged victim through the trial that would probably drag out some uncomfortable things for her as well as myself. I didn't feel comfortable with the evidence that they had was nebulous at best. It would be difficult to argue as far as the timing goes, because it comes down to a violation of an HPO.
But you wasn't guilty. You wasn't guilty, and you still took the plea because it was good enough to get it over.
I'm paying for that.
Exactly.
And I would not encourage other people to do that.
So let me say this: Karenread got no colon.
That's a false equivalency.
Let me just say this.
We're talking about two very different things.
No, we're not. If you're talking about, if you're talking Yannetti, right? Poetic Yannetti, right? Who is a DA that's going to tell her if you get found guilty. Hold on, can I finish? Let me just say this. You got Yannetti because this is on the table. This is real shit. This is what happened. This is what happened.
I'm saying, again,
this is not speculation. I can guarantee you this happened.
There's nothing to support that.
You'll never know, but that's what happens. That's what happened. Of course it was on the table. Of course it was.
But that's not, because again, the victim's family or the victim, if the victim is not deceased.
When the book comes out and all that, and they say it was on the table, then me and you can have the debate. But so we'll just put it in the hypothetical right now. If it was on the table and Yannetti sweetened it up, like, listen, you don't have to go to Framingham State Prison. You're only gonna go two years in the House of Correction, right? We're gonna give you 5 years probation. Well, listen what I'm saying. We're gonna give you 5. All right, I just said it was hypothetical. 5 years probation, blah, 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 right? You're 42 years old. You'll be out before you're 45 years old. This will all be back of you, right? We don't have to put you in Framingham. We'll see if they'll put you in a medium security, maybe somewhere in Rhode Island where nobody knows you, and we'll put this all to the back. And he's poetic with it. Just believe me, take the fines, and you'll be out of here. Why wouldn't you take that deal if you was guilty, though? If you know you did it and you're like, damn, man, this is my only shot to get why wouldn't you? Now, she wasn't guilty and she's like, nah, fuck that. I'm not doing that. And she went all this route. Ask yourself that question. A girl with no colon, all these medical problems, a brain tumor, right? You know what I'm saying? Multiple sclerosis, all this shit. And she knows when she goes to jail, she ain't getting that Mass General Hospital love. You know what I'm saying? Like, she ain't getting that. She goes to jail. They're going to give her a Motrin and tell her to go to sleep.
I don't. I mean, again, like, this is all speculation. I like to deal in the facts of this case, right? And the facts in this case is that although Karenread may or may not be purporting that there was, I don't even know that she actually purported there was a solid deal on the table. I think what she said was that I would never take a deal because I'm innocent, right? Which a lot of innocent people say as well as guilty people say. That doesn't really hold a lot of weight to me.
Go back and look at the 11:58 mark when when Higgins and Brian Albert was there throwing their hands at Higgins, right? He told him to go back. Now, we know in the state of Massachusetts they can't replay it. So that's where he fucked up, right? That was a mistake. Now, if he doubles down, we don't know, but back to my opinion, I think they're going to go in and they're going to run with the waterfall. They're going to say, look at the way it went. Higgins was starting shit. She was talking to him the whole thing, and that's why the fight started.
Right, but then what's going to undercut that immediately is Karen's public statement.
Exactly.
What is her motivation to lie in your estimation? Because I don't believe she's lying. I believe she's telling the truth, because there is not one witness that was there there was not one witness that was there that evening that testified that there was any sort of animosity or altercation.
Yeah, but we don't know what happened in the truck. We don't know what happened in the ride when he was on the phone. He's a cop, right? All he needs. Hold on. Let me ask you this. He's a police officer. He's a police officer. He's a police officer, right? All he needs is an address, right? And all he needs is the address. He texts Jen McKay. Hold on, but he texts Jen McKay. That's speculation. He worked his job as a police officer 16 years. When they ask him, hold on, and let me ask you this. If you're a cop right now, and on the scanner they say control to car number 11. Car number 11 says, yep, car number 11. They say go to 56 blah 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 street. He goes, okay, on my way. That's it. It's muscle memory. He asked her for the address.
Had he been drinking heavily at that point?
Hold on,
I'm assuming he's the one behind the wheel.
Listen what I'm saying. Jen McCabe called him back. Jen McCabe called him. Then they hung up and they talked again. He called her back and talked for another 36 seconds. So what was being said? We don't know. And what I'm saying is, if something was being said, that's my whole point. Karen needs to come out and say it.
We do know what happened in the car to a certain extent, because she has admitted, as well as there's voicemails to support this, that she got into an argument with John. So the only evidence that we have of any sort of animosity or altercation at this point in time, right, is an animosity and altercation between John O'Keefe and Karenread, which then goes into
and
motive.
Maybe Karen.
Okay?
And so can I tell you my theory what happened? Because I never really told you my theory what happened. So let me just say,
I would love to hear that.
The bar footage, then the heel toe, then him telling him to come in. Then you see Chris at the end of the bar. Chris stayed all the way until 12:09, and John just looked at Chris. John just looked at him and drank his beer and didn't pay no mind to him, then walked away. The whole situation seemed funny. Then he got in the car. The only reason what I think happened was, I think when she was on the way over there, she knew John was like, I'm going over there. He talked to Jen McCabe, whatever was said. I don't know if she was saying, don't come over here. I don't know if she said, come over here and talk to the boys, because, there's some problems and it's all because of Karen. And Karen was getting upset because she knew if he goes in there and they start kicking it, she's going to get exposed. So she sat there, she started getting paranoid, and she drove away and she left him. And then she picked up the phone and started screaming at him, because you pervert, segueing to, if that's the right word, talking about the Aruba trip, saying the only reason basically why, right? And I know it's fragmented and it's speculation. Basically, you're a pervert because of what happened in Aruba. And that's the only reason why I started talking to Higgins, you pervert. You know what I mean? Because if Higgins and them got together and Higgins was like, yo, you got problems with me, or I got a problem with you, look what she did. And she thought her spot was going to get blown up. And she got real fucking crazy.
That's not supported by the evidence. Personally, if it wasn't this false narrative, this vilification of any sort of witness against her, the harassment, all that, I don't care that much. And it's not like I have grown an affinity for the O'Keefe family. They are genuinely good people who have suffered tragedy that most of us cannot fathom, and they certainly don't deserve. Nobody does, right? So it's not, but otherwise I wouldn't know who they are. It doesn't affect my life, nor does it yours or anyone else's, right? As far as if she could get off on this honestly. But that's not what is happening here. What is happening here is that this entire narrative has been spun, vilifying people to which there is not even probable cause to establish that they have engaged in any sort of criminal activity ever in their entire lives.
But he texts John, "You coming here?"
Right, he did, and they were friends. And I mean, again, if you go
But he
back
wasn't
to the
friends
text,
that night, though. He was kicking it with his girl. You know, let's just keep it on a me
Right,
and you
but at the
level.
same
Is that not
time,
an issue? Is that not an issue?
Anything. Is it great to have a boyfriend and then go over to some dude's house? No, it's not.
But why is when he's leaving? Why when he's leaving, he's throwing up his hands up at John? What's he saying?
I don't know, and nor do you, because
do you think
neither one of us were there. Listen, let me finish. It does not to me, because every bit of witness testimony establishes that there was no problem or animosity at the bar that night, as well as Karen's extrajudicial statements outside of court to the media also corroborates that there was no issue or animosity that night. So I mean, like, you're injecting speculation in this.
But that's my right, right? Though that's my right, right?
It is your right to do so.
It's my
but
right.
It doesn't make. But it doesn't. It may be your right, but it doesn't make you right.
Okay,
right?
but it doesn't make you right. It doesn't make you right either if you're wrong.
But I have more to stand on with that, because the evidence.
There's reasonable doubt.
Again,
regardless of the matter is, here's the point. Regardless of the matter is whether you like it or not.
But it does not support yours.
Okay, but here's the thing.
Your stance is based on your interpretation of body language, based on your feelings in your life.
Forget all that.
My position is based on witness testimony as well as the defendant's own statements.
But here's the thing. The bottom line is this. The bottom line is this. There was regardless of what I think or what you think, there's reasonable doubt right here that you can't argue. The fucking police did a horrible. Hold on. The police did a horrible job on the investigation. Period. Proctor should have never been kicking it. There was conflict of interest. They didn't lock up Paul Block. They never went in the house. That's wrong. You're still gonna say a Boston cop's dead on a lawn in Boston, and the investigation took 2 hours, and it was all done. Crime tape, nothing, and it's gone. They were supposed. That's the reasonable doubt.
They attempted to put crime tape up. There is cruiser footage of this.
But why didn't they stay there?
Why
didn't they stay there? They left.
They did. They positioned a cruiser. Right. There was a news van. It was somewhat monitored until the state police showed up. At that point, they started the search.
That's what you're saying. That wasn't at the trial. We're going on the trial. Wait a minute. So why would she drop off the donuts and leave it in the car? And when she seen a police car in the news van, she didn't think nothing. If it was there, so she didn't think anything about it.
She went inside and found out what happened.
She testified. She testified she was leaving, and Brian A. came outside and said, "Come here, Julie. Come here. I got to tell you something." That's what she testified to. So if there was a news van there and a cop there, why wouldn't she go inside and say, "What's going on?" So there wasn't one. This is what I'm saying. So at the end of the day, the police did a horrible job, and it's reasonable doubt just off that. And she could beat the case just off that. Whether you love her or you hate her, that's just the fact. And is that justice for what you want and the O'Keefe's want? Probably not. Probably not. Blame on him. I'm putting blame on Higgins at the end of the night, talking shit to him. Texting his girl in the bar, letting him know.
There's been all this.
He texted me, "You come in here." If that text, "You come in here," was any type of something. Let me just say this.
I'm going to give you some. I'm going to give you some information that nobody else has. This is absolutely breaking. All right, let me tell you one thing.
All right.
Jen McCabe has been placed at the center of this, right? We can all agree on that.
Yes.
And now you're kind of looking at Higgins, right? Jen McCabe fucking hates Brian Higgins. I know this 110% as a fact. I know that she doesn't want to be around him. She would groan whenever he was in social situations, which is not that often. Jen McCabe does not like Brian Higgins. If the crux of your theory revolves around Brian Higgins, there is a 0.0% chance that Jen McCabe would ever cover for that guy. She does not like him.
Well, hey, and you know what? That's what you know. I don't know that, and I'll take your word on it. But I'll tell you this, right? And I'm telling you this.
If you really were invested in the truth of this case,
I am invested in the truth. You got to tell me what happened with Higgins. Higgins. Why is Higgins on the stand? on the stand, he said, I didn't say goodbye to anyone. And then he said, and then he's throwing his hands up. Call, what do you call it? Chris A. When I left, yeah, I just left. Nothing happened. Why didn't they bring that up? If they, and here's another thing, when he was looking at the house, right? 3 days later, 4 days later, looking at the house. I'm just going on common sense. They're all looking at the house. You never seen in that group text whatsoever. There's never nothing in that group text. One says everything you're saying. You're saying the poor kids. Why didn't in the group text? Why wasn't there group text saying, "Oh man, I can't believe it. These poor kids, man. It's so sad for them. They lost their mother, their father. Now they lost John." Instead, they're saying the police are back in front of the house. Instead, they're saying, "Tell the guy didn't come in here." Like these are all the suspicious behaviors that innocent people wouldn't say. And then they would get on a platform. Why ain't they on? Let me ask you this. Why ain't they on?
Only guilty people rubberneck when the cops are around?
Wait a minute, Kate. Why wouldn't they get on a platform and speak to their innocence? Why is that?
I can tell you why. Number one, because they didn't want to, and I know this for fact again because I talked to these people. They did not want to compromise the integrity of the criminal case one way or the other. And number two, and I think this is a pretty well established fact because people have been running their mouths about it. They are under contract with a film company. Right? They cannot speak.
That's and listen, Kate, you know what, Kate? If that is the reason why they're not speaking for their truth, for fucking people calling them murderers or potential murderers, then I don't fuck with them then. That's crazy. And you gotta be like, what?
Do you think that people get paid for documentaries? Is that the understanding that you have? Because that's
listen, they're gonna get, but they're still under contract. They're still selling their soul to something.
There's no sale involved. There's no sale involved.
All right. So my point is whether it's just for pride then, I don't know. I'm just, maybe that word ain't the right word then. I'm just saying if that's the reason, that's a bad reason.
Do what I'm doing, which is like bullshit little shit, or you could do what we did in the long term is like when this story comes out.
But they wasn't 2020. Why didn't they get on the 2020? Why didn't they get on the Vanity Fair? Because if they get on and speak their truth, right? If they can say something
under contract.
All right.
There is
all right.
An
That's your take. And that's a fact. That's a fact. You're telling me that's a fact.
It's an absolute fact. I am under the same contract with different constraints about what I can and can't talk about, but like we have already filmed. We have already filmed.
Okay.
So like there is a contract in place here. They are constrained about who they can talk to and what and how long they can do it. Paul has done a little bit as much as he can. It is absolutely worth the wait.
People are calling you murderers. It's worth the wait. Okay. But in the meantime, you're being, in the meantime, the public perception is
if they come out and proclaim their innocence, is it going to change anyone's mind, or are you going to
if they tell us if they break down and they tell you, I would love to hear it. Well, let me ask you this. So then why is the feds involved? Why the feds get involved in this?
That is an excellent question, but I would follow that up with why do they have no targets and no indictments?
And you know what? I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
That's a big question mark there. I don't trust the federal government personally. I don't. But I know that by this point, if there was, and again, you have a neutral party in the judge, right? The judge is a neutral fact finder here who has read every single page of that TUI dump, right? All that information, and has said openly in court, I have read every single page and I cannot establish the third party culprit. It doesn't exist. Most of the Fed's findings were consistent with the Commonwealth's findings. That has also been said in open court. It hasn't been consistent.
How about the phone getting thrown out? September 20, right the day before he's supposed to hand his phone in, he updates his phone. What's up with that?
And you know what? That is kind of a non-issue anyway because it wasn't admissible. They went for the Rule 17. It was denied twice over. So it wasn't material.
Why did Jen McCabe erase all John O'Keefe's text messages? If that was her friend, why would that? Why is all the other ones still there?
That was never even alleged.
Why is the other one still there? Why is the other one still there and the other ones are not?
It was never alleged that she erased all her text messages with John. Clearly, they have her text messages with John as they were brought up in court.
On John's phone. On John's phone, not on her phone.
That is not what was testified to at all. That is not what was testified to at all. That was never brought up. She did not delete all of her messages with John O'Keefe. That was never been alleged.
They said to John, they said on John's phone, this one was erased and that one's not erased on his phone.
That is not what happened at all.
That's what happened. They pulled a couple of calls up.
No. They are claiming that a handful of calls were erased and that was rectified on the stand again.
Was it?
By the experts. Yes.
I didn't see that. On hers, it said deleted. And then on John's, it said not
There are a
deleted.
handful of things that purported to be
Okay, but
deleted
even if
in
it's
the wall
deleted,
files.
even if it's
In
deleted,
the wall files.
they still
And so
found it.
Jessica Hyde and Ian Whiffen both got on the stand, Ian Whiffen being the expert from Celebrate itself, and explained that these were not user deletions. They were temporary files, right, that later on get committed to a permanent database.
And let me
and
ask you
therefore,
this: so on the group messages, did you see one thing on the group because you're so an advocate about the kids? Have you seen one thing on that group message when the shit just went down? Any of them say, "How the fuck did this happen?" Poor kids.
that was not brought up in court, so I have not.
But I'm
seen the
saying,
group
why
messages.
not? Why haven't you seen it?
Because the only things that were brought
It
up on
didn't
the
get
group
brought up in
messages-
court because if that's what was on a text and the government knew and the Commonwealth had that text, them saying, "Poor John, I can't believe this happened," they would throw that right in her face.
And how would that be admissible? It
Because
wouldn't
it
be
just
admissible.
shows
It's
the
not
jury
pertinent.
that they cared.
Obviously, they cared. I mean, that's crazy to think that they didn't. They answered the phone when Karen called. They got up in the wee hours of the morning.
Scariest phrase I think I've ever heard from a detective.
Any part of the actual investigation that you would do over?
I wouldn't change anything.
Nothing.
No.
We worked this case just like we always do.
Given what we now know about how this case was investigated and not investigated, for him to literally say on national TV, "Nah, not so much. I would work this case just the same way I'd work every other case." Every other defendant, every other defense attorney who has represented a defendant in which Michael Proctor has touched a piece of evidence should be clamoring for some sort of habeas corpus, some sort of retrial. He is a disaster in terms of an investigator. For him to say, maybe I should have looked at another car, maybe I should have interviewed a couple of witnesses. Are you kidding? He acts like it's an afterthought. That is your job, sir.
I go by the name of J.F.K. If you like this video, subscribe. Make sure you hit that like button. Thank you, and God bless.